one key word for families, and that is alignment. Family
Okay.
members have to be aligned. They have to be aligned in their mindset. They have to be
Mhm.
aligned in their priorities. They
Mhm.
have to be communicating thoroughly and openly so that they're aligned in their planning and their decision making. And those three key components, marketing, sales, and customer fulfillment, they need to be aligned in what they're doing in those three areas.
Hi, everybody. This is Christina Hawkins, and I'm with the Moving Marketing Results on the Moving Up podcast. And I'm here with Glenn Smith, who is a small business or an executive and leadership coach for small businesses, especially family owned businesses. And I asked him, I've known Glenn for a very, very long time. He has helped me with my business grow. And I wanted to invite him on because he has been focusing a lot more on family owned businesses, especially with his background and other companies that you work on. I thought he'd be a great guest to help you as moving company owners. I know many of you own family owned, are family owned, and I thought he'd be a great guest to help you guys kind of work with internally with your business and how to grow, how to build relationships with either your family members that work for you or a spouse, typically is what happens. And so, Glenn, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. And let's just start off and just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into coaching family owned businesses.
Well, my wife and I both grew up in family-owned businesses, and so as a kid, I was helping my parents and in their business, and then when I got in high school, I did a lot of the grunt work in the family business, and then after that, in college and beyond, I worked in more of a leadership role in the business. So, and my wife has a background in family business as well. So that's just been a part of who we were from the very beginning of our lives. I left the family business after a few years and went into faith-based work, actually working a lot with families. And then after about 10 years of that, I decided to make a shift, and actually more than 10 years. But anyway, I decided to make a shift and work with business owners and combine both my background in family business and in just family work in general. And so that's what I do today. I work with business owners, small to mid-sized businesses, help them with scaling, help them with organizing and structuring their business, help them with systemizing their business so that they can have a systems dependent business as opposed to an owner dependent business. And I do a lot of work in the area of leadership development and helping business owners and particularly family members who are business owners develop non-family members to be leaders in the business. A lot of times in the family business, their thinking is, you know, I can't scale unless I have, enough family members to carry all the load. And so that's not true. They can scale and do great things. So just in a nutshell, that's what I do.
What do you think are some kind of unique challenges that these types of companies face when compared to just other regular small businesses when they're family owned?
Well, if you're a business owner, no matter if you have other family involved or not, the business is very personal. It's yours, it's your baby, and it's just very personal. It's very close to you. And when you have other family members involved, well, that even makes it more personal and, more close to you, if you will. And so sometimes it can feel so personal that it's hard to communicate about certain things, or if there's disagreements, you're not sure how to resolve those. Most of us grow up in life and get into adult life, and by nature, most of us are not natural conflict managers, and so we have to learn those skills. Like I said, if you got family members involved, again, it can feel more personal and more sensitive because you don't want to have a conflict that's going to mess up Thanksgiving dinner. So those are some uniquenesses with family businesses.
Especially if it's a successful family business, every Thanksgiving can be get a little awkward as you know, aunts, nieces, and nephews join, and maybe they don't work out as well, or you know, the brother is doing really well and but now wants to leave, and it makes for very awkward
That
personal
is true.
relationships when you're off out of the business.
Yep.
What are some of the bigger mistakes that you might see when, you know, specifically moving company owners, when trying to grow their business as, with the family? What are some of those bigger mistakes that you tend to see?
The most common mistake is just a failure to communicate thoroughly.
Mm.
Sometimes they communicate on a surface level and enough to operationally keep things going, but they're not as comfortable talking about some of the unseen dynamics that may go on between them, that may go on between one of them and an employee. They talking about the future sometimes is difficult. So there are several topics and issues that family members are sometimes afraid to just jump in there and let's talk about this. Let's kind of push through. I equate it to most people when as they get older, doing estate planning and talking about estate planning with their children, for example.
Mhm.
That sometimes is uncomfortable. You're not sure how a child is going to respond to what you're doing, and as a parent you're always trying to make sure everything's equal and fair, and
Mhm.
the same dynamic goes on even with siblings and other family members who are involved in businesses, cousins. um, it's You just got to talk about that, and that's the mistake I think, that families who own businesses, they don't talk deep enough and they don't talk thoroughly enough, not only about the operation of their business, but their succession plan, how are we going to develop people? Do we have the right people? Um, I think one unique thing about family businesses is that the family members tend to care a lot about their employees.
Right.
And I find that generally true in small business, but especially in the family-owned business, it's like their employees are kind of adopted
Part of the
family.
family. Yeah, yeah, they become part of, especially the longer they're there, for sure.
That's exactly right. And so then again, that makes it even more difficult sometimes to have hard conversations, or maybe one member of the family who's an owner is having a conflict with an employee that another owner family member has a real close relationship with that employee.
Hmm.
So those unusual dynamics take place, and sometimes family members just want to avoid those uncomfortable topics, again because they don't know where it's going to lead to.
Right,
Uh,
right. So, you know, based on that, how can they effectively separate personal and professional to make sure that things are running smoothly? Obviously, communication, regular and upfront discussions about the goals. You know, where do we want to be? How do we want to get there? But what other ways can they effectively kind of separate that? Because I think it does. I mean, I've been in the middle of those conversations where the family members, there's two brothers that work together, and you know, what I see the best relationship in that regard is one's the outspoken one, the one that's out in front doing the sales. The other one's the operations. He's quiet. He just gets it done. He loves spreadsheets. He loves, you know, and that's a really great dynamic. I see that with husband and wife as well. But sometimes I get in the middle because there's a conflict, and I'm third party completely. And so I'm just curious how, you know, if you were to coach them, how can they separate that personal professional kind of relationship?
well, it starts with just like you described. The family members need to delineate who's responsible for what and what duties each person has, and define their lanes, if you will. If you're an owner, you kind of want to be in every lane, and if you've got a sibling or a family member who's in the business, you define your lane, them define their lane, and y'all respect each other and let each other make decisions. And maybe that brother or sister is not going to make the decision you'd make, but you got to give them space to do that. And then there come times that you think, man, making the decision the way they're wanting to go is a big mistake.
Hmm.
And so you got to talk about that. But and again, that's one of those uncomfortable conversations. So I think it begins with just defining what your duties are, who's responsible for what, and then um, as you move forward, find out what are the issues. And one of the things I do with business owners is I encourage them to keep an ongoing issues list and keep, let's write down what are the issues. We may not solve them today or this week, but let's at least identify them. What are the issues? And for many of them, it's scary to just admit, hey, this is an issue.
Hmm.
It becomes personal, or they're afraid it's
Yeah.
going to
I
be too
kept it
personal.
bottled inside. I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to put waves in the ocean right now. I'll just keep quiet for it. But that can be toxic if you're not careful.
Yeah, yeah, it sure can.
Build
And it
resentment
hurts the relationship long term.
long term. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So um the other thing that I see is with small business, family owned businesses is their ability to scale. Because I think you addressed it in the very beginning, is they're they think everybody has to be a family member just to keep it even. Everybody has to be a part of the business, and scaling tends to be difficult and I think again, you mentioned this earlier, is you invite somebody in and they become part of the family, but maybe that's not the best thing for the business to scale, is to treat them, oh, come to our birthdays and our Thanksgivings, you'll be part of the family. What would you recommend for them to scale and grow the business without fearing of, well, I didn't invite my brother's daughter to, you know,
Yeah,
I need.
well, you just mentioned a common scenario, and it varies by the family. Some families are very, just by nature, very relational, very inclusive, and
Mhm.
they include not only employees but other people into their family circle, so to speak. And uh, in those situations, inviting them to parties and family events is what they would do otherwise. So that's natural. But for many families, they don't do that. And that's not a bad thing. That's just how your family operates.
Right.
And there's no reason to, feel bad about it. It's just,
Right.
it's how we operate. And in those cases, it's best to kind of keep a separation between that key employee or those certain key employees and the family.
Mhm.
When I'm working with multiple family members who lead a business, I always encourage them to have some separation.
Mhm.
And again, for some families that are always including everybody and everything, that's difficult. But I think it's healthy for the family to just have the family business between the family.
Mhm.
Uh, and sometimes they like other people there because if it gets too intimate, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it just depends on the family. But definitely when it comes to scaling, you mentioned that. Um, what I'll see happen a lot of times is, let's say it's two brothers and they're
Mhm.
in business together. I see this a lot.
Mhm.
And one brother, he gets the idea, he gets the mindset of building a business and delegating and, pulling himself out of the business so that the business is not dependent on him. And he's getting this vision and he's getting this mindset, which is what you got to have to scale your business. But the other brother doesn't get it.
Mhm.
And the other brother is like working themselves, 10 or 12 hours a day because they think that's what a business owner does and that's what they've
Mhm.
got to
Oh,
do to
wow,
be
that's right. I didn't even
successful.
think about that. It's just
And
different
yeah,
values and different mindsets about the business. Yeah, absolutely.
exactly. And then what happens is if that, what I would say, the exhausted
Yeah, yeah,
brother,
right.
what happens is if he sees that other brother starting to pull back, then
Hmm.
he starts feeling resentment
Hmm.
and, sometimes jealousy. But
Sure.
more often I see resentments like, my other brother's not working like I am. He's not working as hard.
You
He's
went
not.
fishing yesterday all afternoon. That's not fair. I stayed here and worked all day. That's so not
That's
fair. In the
exactly
meantime,
right.
the visionary had delegated out the work,
Yep.
and the other one has got that grind nose to the grindstone. Let's keep going, run, run, run without thinking about scaling. He's
Yep.
not thinking scaling. You're right. I see the difference now. Yeah.
And so, one of the things I try to do is help in that case, the brothers or the family members develop alignment in their mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Let's think the same way. Here's the way we want to think. And I always, for scaling, you've got to delegate and elevate. You've got to delegate responsibilities, train your people, build trust, delegate responsibilities with checks and balances. You don't just, give the business away. I've seen that happen, and
Mm-hmm.
it's,
There's a
had
balance.
bad results.
Yeah, sure,
But
sure.
you've got to delegate,
Yeah.
and delegation does not come easy to most business owners.
Right, right.
And for the one who's getting it, the other one's got to get it and not think that sibling is sloughing off their responsibility or dumping everything on them.
And that's where that
Getting
conversation
that
comes in, because that
alignment.
might not be outspoken. He might not be saying anything. He's just grumbling. And, while the other one might be fishing, he's probably like, well, he shouldn't be spending all this time on it. We need to be hiring more people. And so there's that resentment starts to build. But again, you talked earlier is write down, put it on a piece of paper, and everybody agrees on whatever issues you think there are. And that way we can get it out in the open and one can help the other. Like, okay, the one that went fishing can go to the other guy and say, hey, listen, we need to hire somebody. You shouldn't be spending all day long. I agree with you. You shouldn't be doing that. Versus the other one say, I need you to be in the office a little bit more. You're gone a little too much. You've delegated too much and things are falling apart because you're not managing the people that you've hired. So it goes both ways. But yeah, you're right. Scaling, if you've got that type of partnership, yeah, everybody's got to be in agreement, the roles that they're going to play. So that's
They really,
absolutely.
yeah, they really do. And so a lot of times I'll do one-on-one work with the
Uh,
siblings. We
mhm,
always meet together weekly
mhm.
so that we're all working together on the same, on aligned goals and an
Yeah,
aligned vision.
sure.
But then a lot of times I'll meet one-on-one with different members to help them kind of process maybe some of that hidden resentment or frustration that they don't feel comfortable talking about,
Mhm.
but they'll talk with me one
You're
on
like a
one.
couples therapist to at some point. I absolutely think that you're a couples therapist, just trying to get people to talk. Like, can we just sit down and talk and have a
Yeah,
conversation?
well, and I'll say kudos to you too because you've helped me a lot in my marketing. And I got this one client a while back, and
Yeah.
he said, "I found you because I was doing a Google search on a business psychologist
Oh, okay. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
or a business therapist. I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what he
yeah,
said, a
yeah.
business therapist." And
That's right.
that's not one of our key words, but it popped up.
Well, you can thank Google for that because it's now interpreting all kinds of things that you put out there. So, hey, somebody needed that type of business coach is it's like someone that understands the psyche of individuals in a business. But yeah, you absolutely do that. I think having a business coach like you that is very calm, that is very straightforward, doesn't mince words. And I think that's the kind of coach that you need in any kind of small business because it can get very fiery. I've just gotten a client that very sadly it was a husband and wife team and he passed away.
Hmm.
Young couple, right? So just horrible and tragic all the way around. And that what do you do then? Now the wife has taken over, but now there's a brother, the husband's best friend was taking over the business, and then instant clash. They just didn't work well together. I don't know any more than that. So, but it's just sad all around. But again, it's always just having that very clear communication with everybody. And I'm wondering too, because the wife was not very, from my understanding, very involved in the business, but now she's thrown into this. And I wonder if there had been a lot more conversation because he knew he was sick. not, this is not anything, he didn't do anything wrong, but I'm just wondering, as a business coach, when you just having those types of conversations, if you are the owner and you've got a wife at home, what do hey, there's got to be that conversation. This is what's going to happen. And here, everybody needs to be aligned here. But yeah, I can just see you stepping in, just kind of helping, having those conversations before anything happens.
Yeah,
You never
absolutely.
know.
I encourage all of my clients to, be sure you've got a CPA, and most all of them do, but
Mhm.
also be sure you've got an estate planning attorney
Yeah.
and who can help you with wills and, if you need some trust or structure to help you think about how do you structure your entity or your entities. Most families have more than one entity, or a lot of families do,
Hmm.
and they do it for different liability purposes, or uh, they need to be thinking about inheritance and the estate plan. And so
Hmm.
I tell them, have your CPA, have your an estate planning attorney, and then have you a financial advisor. Uh,
Yeah.
I prefer somebody who's got a CFP kind of designation who can help people think about their plan. Uh,
Hmm.
what's the plan? Here's a scenario.
Hmm.
Your spouse dies suddenly. I'm working currently with two brothers. Actually, it's funny. I have several businesses where it's two
Your
brothers.
brothers. Yeah.
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 But I'm working with one in particular where they had not thought about what if one of them dies
Yeah.
suddenly, unexpectedly?
Hmm.
What's going to happen? Well, this brother, he said, if one of them dies, he said, the way it's all set up, I'm in business with his wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
I'm not,
exactly it.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure that's a good scenario,
Yeah. Right. Right.
you know?
Right. But you
Uh,
want to take care of your wife. You want to take care of your family. So you're right. You need to have those conversations with a lawyer and a
mhm.
financial, yeah, to make sure. You just never know. I mean, this is a
Yeah.
young
And,
guy who,
yeah, and there are resources available like key man insurances and buy sell agreements, those kinds of things. Your estate planning attorney or your family attorney can help you think through what do you need, and every family's different,
yeah,
so it's all personally customized to your family and your needs.
yeah.
So those are important things to think about when you've got multiple family members involved in the business. The
Yeah.
next thing that happens is when they retire or they get to a place where they want to exit the business,
Hmm.
uh, you know, which kid's going to get authority?
Hmm.
Is it going to be my children or your children, or
Hmm. Oh gosh, now it just, oh
it
gosh, it makes
it
it even
just gets
worse.
complicated.
Yeah, yeah.
And so nobody wants to talk about that because
No,
it's complicated, it's uncomfortable, but
sad.
eventually you need to be talking about that.
Yeah,
And
for
so
sure.
before I finish work with a client, we're typically having those kind of conversations because I want them to have peace of mind
Hmm.
that, God forbid something tragic happen.
Hmm.
But you know what? If it does, it's not going to be more grievous than it has to be.
Right, right. Because you're already grieving. So
That's
if
right.
we can have things in place to make sure that the business continues so that, because you have to think also your employees, they want to be employed the next day. They don't
That's
want to
right.
be in the middle of something like this because they're also grieving. But let me just ask you too, because I know we talk about small business, family owned, brothers, husband, wife, and stuff. And I'm just curious. I also think about two guys that went to college together. I almost think that they're brothers as well. So I feel like anybody that's had that very, very close relationship, they've known each other for years, they've grown up with each other. I still think those are still family owned. I kind of put them in that cog, that segment of family owners, because again, it's still the same relationship. It doesn't matter. So I'm just putting that out there. But I will say, I think a lot of the mistakes I see also is the husband and wife team. And only because I've seen it from a third party, and I'm in the middle of it, where the owner is the husband. He's worked in the moving industry. He's decided to break out on his own and he's going to go for it. The wife, just by default, tends to be the receptionist, operations, bookkeeper. So again, you talk about the relationship, the visionary, and then the operations person who's working their tail off. In addition to the fact that they're answering the phone, she's now sales. She doesn't realize it, but she's sales. And I find that to be difficult as well. I don't know if she wants to be in that role. She's probably got 2 kids, taking them to school, picking them up, babysitters coming and going. She's juggling. And I often wonder if that's the best scenario. I get it in the beginning, but I think after about 6 months, you need to start just because I see it and I don't see it as a good method of growing and scaling the business. You've got to immediately start getting somebody in there to take your wife, if, not completely out, but make sure she knows, again, your role is this. How many, what are some of the keys to successfully running a business as a couple?
Yeah. Well, you hit the common scenario where a wife oftentimes she wants to be supportive of her husband. She believes in him. She wants him to know she believes in him. And so she'll jump in and she'll start doing anything and everything that he needs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay for a short period of time.
Yeah, yeah.
But after a while, then if she doesn't have the opportunity to say, here's what I want to do, next year and in years to come, I don't necessarily want to be the go-to do-all
Mm-hmm.
solution to every issue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I'll oftentimes have one-on-ones with the husband and the wife
Mm-hmm.
talk about those kinds of things. What do you really want to do, and what is it that you feel good at, you want to keep doing maybe, or those things that you don't like doing? There's
Mm-hmm.
no reason. I mean, you don't have to have it so that the husband gets to do all the fun stuff that he wants to do, and she has to do all the cruddy stuff that nobody wants to do.
Right, right.
So you just got to have those conversations, and sometimes it's better for me to have that one-on-one with each of them and then bring them together and say, okay, now let's talk. Here's what I've heard you say. Here's what I've heard you say, and facilitate. And I think more than anything else, what I do, especially with husbands and wives, is I just facilitate the conversations, and so that I prepare them for it, and then I help them, identify, okay, here are the 3 points I really need to have a conversation about. So, husbands and wives can be a little more difficult, even than siblings, because uh, siblings will sometimes grow up fighting.
Right.
And
You're
so
used to the
it's
conflict.
just our way of life.
Right, right, right.
Husbands and wives, it
They
doesn't.
never get a break from each other.
Mm-mm.
They got to go to bed.
Yep, that's
They got to
right.
raise their children, and that's where I think a lot of that conflict sometimes starts, where she starts resentment. But yeah, I think it goes right back to, hey, if she's going to be part of this, then she needs to be equal owner as well. She needs
Mhm.
to have a say in the direction. So it's a 50-50 thing, and you guys have to agree together. Um,
Years ago, my wife and I were doing a venture together, and what we found is that we talked about the business all the time.
yeah,
We
yeah.
got up talking about it. We talked about it all day long. We talked about it over dinner. We talked about it at bedtime. We talked about it all the time.
Mm,
And then we just realized this is not healthy.
mm-mm.
We had kids and we had other things going on, and it's like we gotta separate that. And so for
Yeah.
husbands and wives, being able to separate that. And so
That's
we
good.
uh, we came up with this idea that you've seen the circles with the line through it, the
Yeah,
red circle with the line through it.
yeah.
We put a picture of our business circle with a line through it. Hey, let's put this on. We're not talking about business
Right,
now.
right.
So you
Just,
need that.
hey, between 9 to 5, that's business hours. We can talk business. After 5 o'clock, we don't talk business. If there's
Yeah.
something you want to discuss, put it on a piece of paper, and we'll start tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good way. So I think we've kind of already addressed this, but the common conflicts that arrive between a husband and wife, and then how can they manage that effectively? I don't know if there's anything else you can think of that would be a conflict other than constantly
Expect
talking
Yeah,
about it.
expectations are a big thing. What does she expect him to be doing, and what does he expect her to be doing? And then being realistic about your expectations,
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that, if the husband's wanting his wife to do such and such, and she doesn't want to do that, or
Mm-hmm.
vice versa, there are
Mm-hmm.
alternatives. There are
Mm-hmm.
other ways to get the job done. and get stuff covered and realize, okay, we both need to benefit and we both need to find joy in business ownership. And the only reason to own a business carries a lot of responsibility and weight. The only reason to own a business is to create the life you want.
Hmm.
And so it needs to create the life that both the husband and the wife want and they
Hmm.
want together. And sometimes, believe it or not, they've never talked about what they really want
Right.
together.
Right. Right. He just decided I quit my job. We're starting a moving company, which takes a lot of expense. You got to get a truck and find people. Um, I think we've already talked about this too, is setting clear roles and responsibilities, to avoid stepping on each other's toes. But I think that just goes across the board for everybody. And we talked about it earlier. So, but anything else you want to add to that? Clear roles and responsibilities. I always think EOS. I know you like EOS, the Entrepreneurs Operating
System.
System. There you go. I think is that too small? It's small businesses, especially family, and probably EOS is a good tool.
EOS is an awesome tool, and I use it a lot. I started out as an EOS implementer almost 10 years ago, and I don't implement anymore, but I do work with EOS companies as a fractional integrator. And that helps families, especially husbands and wives,
Yeah.
enormously.
Yeah.
But EOS is a great management system. And when you grow your business to the point that you have other people taking key roles of leadership, whether they're family members or not, you need a management system.
Hmm.
And EOS is the best, simplest management system for a small business I've ever seen. And it can scale. It can scale. I've got a client that has 200 employees and they run on EOS.
Hmm.
And it's scalable, it's simple. So whether you're a very small business or a rapidly growing business,
Hmm.
it's a great system for you.
Yeah. Awesome. What are some practical ways that, some of these couples can kind of maintain a strong marriage while they're running a business together? What are some practical things they can do?
Well, first and foremost, they've got to be committed to a strong marriage.
Yeah.
You know, no matter what happens in the business, we're together and we're committed to each other. My wife and I will be celebrating our 50th wedding anniversary this year.
Wow.
And so, those years didn't come, that it wasn't always butterflies and unicorns.
Yeah. Right.
You go
Yeah.
through challenging times, but you stay together and you work on the relationship because you're committed to each other first and foremost.
Yeah.
And you got to be honest when the business is starting to interfere with the relationship and the
Mhm.
marriage and the family, and it often does. And
Yeah.
so you got to be honest about that, and be able to talk about that without it getting too emotional. I
Mhm.
think the biggest thing for couples is they've got to, you know, a marriage relationship it's not robotic, it's not, mechanical. It's very intimate. It's very emotional. It's personal.
Mhm.
That's the word I use. It's just personal. In
Right.
business, you can't make good rational decisions about things if things are very personal. And so couples have to be able to separate marriage and family from business and realize we're going to nurture the marriage, we're going to nurture our family no matter what happens. The business helps us facilitate the family,
Mhm.
it's not vice versa. And sometimes those priorities get messed up.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit.
Mhm.
Talk about hiring and retaining employees through for family-owned businesses. What kind of, especially when you're trying to build a strong team. I mean, all of this kind of builds on top of a strong relationship between the family members, but now hiring in that situation, what advice would you give a company for that?
The most important thing is to create and operate by a process.
Mm-hmm.
Many times, business owners, they don't have a hiring and selection process. They intuitively hire, they just hire from their gut. They talk to somebody, I kind of like this person, let's hire them, you know?
Mhm.
And it's so subjective. And so the most important thing, in my opinion, is let's create a hiring process. And our process might involve first creating a well-designed job description with clear qualifications, setting up an interview process, where maybe it's a phone screen, and then after that, if that goes well, a first face-to-face interview, and after that, if that goes well, maybe we do an assessment of some sort, a hiring assessment or a simple personality assessment. I think those are very powerful. And then
Mhm.
we do another face-to-face interview, but have you 4 or 5 defined steps that give you a greater chance of hiring and finding the right person. And
Mhm.
one of the EOS principles is we got to have the right people in the right seats. And that's what we're trying to define. Is this the right person? And by that, we're asking, do they fit our culture? And part
Mhm.
of that is, do they fit our family culture and
Right.
the way we operate our business? Do they fit our core values? And then if they're the right person, is this the right seat for that person? Do they have the competencies and the aptitude? And I always tell my clients to hire for the 3 C's, which are character, competence, and chemistry.
Mhm.
So first off, let's talk to them about, who they are as a person and what shaped them and the kind of person they are. And I give them a list of 85 positive character traits, and you can't screen for all of those, but pick out 3 or 4 that are really important to you, like maybe work ethic, integrity, 3 or 4 key character qualities. They're not necessarily delineated in your core values, but you want people with this kind of character.
Mhm.
And so in your multi-step hiring process and selection process, we're looking for character. And then competence, that's what everybody is looking for, but they don't really test it a lot.
Mhm.
They just go by their gut. I think they could do this job. When
Oh
if you
yeah.
drill down, they've never done anything like this before successfully,
Right.
you
Right.
know.
Right.
But you look for competence or clear aptitude. And then the last one, the last C is chemistry. Is this the kind of person I would enjoy working with every day? And the people in our organization would enjoy working with every day.
Mhm.
And I think business owners, sometimes we feel so desperate for people and people to hire and help us that we're not as selective as we need to be.
Right.
And
Right.
for couples, sometimes you'll find one or family members, one will say, "Well, let's just go hire anybody," and the other one go, "No, no, no." you
Yeah.
know. So
Right.
if you can
Let's just have
agree
a
upon a
second.
process, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
if you can agree upon a process, here's our hiring process. You have your set interview questions,
Mhm.
and your steps, and you agree to follow the process, you're more likely at the end to be in alignment on the decision.
Mhm.
And now it slows it down a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And business owners have to be willing, because probably this is the most important decision they make.
Right.
And so
Right.
don't get too fast, don't be too hasty. Make sure you're hiring the right person
Mhm.
for the right seat. And
Mhm.
process is a key there.
And with moving companies, we're not talking about hiring the actual laborers because sometimes those are short lived and
Yeah.
they're either contracted or they do become full time employees. Especially the drivers become like the project manager on site and stuff. I think the key is also what are the key roles in the business. They tend to be the operations one that manages, literally the fleet, who's where, when, how long, and then a salesperson. I think that's as crucial as an operations person. Um, I think the other key role I see missing is the financial operator, the one that knows how much to charge, how much, claims, what to do with that, insurance, that gets super sticky and complicated. Marketing, though, I tend to see a marketing problem. I see this in a lot of the companies too, is they hire a marketing person to be the end all be all things. And they want to bring somebody on that can do the paid ads, knows how to do websites, understands SEO, can do a content, knows social media. And that person really just doesn't exist. And so in addition to the fact, understanding the role between a salesperson and a marketing person, I always consider a marketing person, in a football scenario, the quarterback, hike, throws. Receiver is the salesperson who's literally got to take it to the end zone and the touchdown. And those two need to work in compatibility. But I think when you're hired as a family-owned business, it's just understanding who's going to have those very, very key roles and what are they going to do. Sometimes, again, just building out exactly what that person's going to be doing. So how can they create a positive work culture? We'll wrap up. I know it's like in 45 minutes here. How can they create a work culture to maintain? I think that's another problem. They hire people without knowing what that role is supposed to be. And then the work culture, maybe there's some toxicity because we don't have a really great working relationship as partners, the small business. But what would you recommend to kind of build and retain employees?
Yeah, well, you touched on the importance of having an organizational chart.
Yeah. Okay.
And who does what. We got
Mhm.
marketing, we got sales, we got operations, we got finance and back office.
Mhm.
And have an organization chart so that you're organized in knowing these different roles. And of course, then you got maybe managers or drivers or
Mhm.
workers who are laborers who they do the heavy lifting, so to speak.
Right.
And so just have all that on a chart so it's organized. That's the first thing. And then once everybody sees okay, here's how we're organized, and here's who's responsible for what. And I always, in the organizational chart, in EOS, we call it an accountability chart. And
Mhm.
we put the 3 to 5 major responsibilities of each box, you know, and then we know who's responsible for what, and we're all transparent about that.
Mhm.
That's the first key to, I think, a healthy culture is organization and transparency. And then once you have that, you have an opportunity to build mutual accountability within the team, because invariably, I'm going to come in one day or one week and I'm going to not be as motivated or energized as I should be. And if I've got a peer who knows the structure, who knows the responsibilities, who we're all transparent about it,
Mhm.
uh, oftentimes a peer will just come to you and say, "Hey, how are you doing? What's going on? You don't seem to be on your game
Mhm.
today or
Mhm.
this week."
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, and of course, as an owner or manager, you have to do that too. But having that organization, transparency, and then the open communication, and that requires sometimes it requires a weekly meeting, and it doesn't have to be a long meeting. Sometimes it's a daily meeting, a daily huddle. That's a
Mhm.
10 or 15 minute huddle, but
Mhm.
structured times where, okay, let's talk about things. How are things going? What's happening today? What's happening this week? Uh, so those are all structural kind of things that get overlooked when we talk about culture.
Right. Right.
But once you got the structural things in place, after that, it's about relationships and
Mhm.
good communication and
Mhm.
respect and kindness and character and commitment. And one of the tools I use a lot is Patrick Lencioni's book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. I think every team ought to be educated in that book. It's a simple, easy read, and talk it through, because it starts with trust. Are we building trust? And trust is not static, it's dynamic. It's either increasing or it's decreasing.
Mhm.
And so, how are we doing on trust? And trust leads to healthy conflict management. Are we
Mhm.
addressing issues? Are we being open and honest with each other? And then that goes from there to commitment,
Right.
and where everybody, hey, I'm committed to my role and I'm committed to the good of the company.
Right.
And then after that comes that mutual accountability I mentioned. And once that's there, then the fifth level is results. You get to see phenomenal results in your team. So that's a core thing in developing culture as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one thing that we miss also is what I like is the key performance indicators, and that keeps that trust. Right.
Yes.
We've all got our role, and so as a family owned business, and not just by gut, whether someone likes you or not, we're all very clear about what the expectations are on a day-to-day basis. So the huddle helps out, like, okay, Joe, salesman, we expect, 10, 15 calls today.
Yes.
Operations, we've got 5 moves, 3 apartments and 2 homes. So here's the plan you need to execute. And the KPI is no claims, you know,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
no
And if
claims,
you
and everybody shows up on time and the client gives us a 5-star review.
Yeah,
But
and if you have a weekly meeting with your team, you can review those. How do we do on our KPIs last week?
yeah,
You know, and
yeah,
every person's responsible for one or more KPIs.
yeah, yeah.
And there's transparency. Again, it's not like it's, you know,
Yeah, it's very
hiding.
clear. In fact, even have like a little whiteboard. It's everybody can see everybody's, what their expectations are for that role. Have it, everybody can see it. We're not hiding anything. And
Mhm.
just again, that transparency, clarity, and communication, and like, hey, it looks like, what's going on? How can we help? How can we help?
Yes. Yes.
What's not working? All right. Final things, just kind of closing this out. What piece of advice would you give to a family-owned business that is looking to grow in 2025? Thinking about moving companies. If you were, if you had that role right now and they asked you the first question they had, how can you help me grow in 2025? What would advice be?
My personal opinion and the opinions I'm hearing in my circles is that most people are pretty optimistic about business in 2025. The new administration is very business friendly and business
Mhm,
supportive, so that's
mhm,
good.
mhm,
And so I think there's opportunity for growth in most sectors.
mhm,
And when I think about moving companies, the housing market is for most areas of the country has been a little down in the last year or two.
mhm,
Interest rates has impacted that, but again, the what I'm hearing is the mood is shifting to
mhm.
more positive outlooks and more optimism.
Right.
And so I would say be thoughtful about your marketing. You gotta market. Now, I don't say that just because that's your
Right.
field, but
Just from overall,
uh,
yeah. Sure.
when a business stops marketing, they stop growing. And
Mhm,
marketing it also is dynamic. It's not static. 15 years ago, I did my own SEO and
mhm.
dabble a little bit in paid ads. I would never try that today because it's become
Right.
so complex and it's
So
changing. The algorithms are changing. You know this. This is what you do. And
every
yeah,
day the algorithm shifts. Yeah. We don't even
uh,
talk about rankings anymore with our clients because the rankings just go up and down. Just,
yes.
yeah, it might go up 2 days from now. You know,
That's
but
right. And
mhm,
so, pay attention to marketing. That's a big thing.
yep.
Don't take your eye off the marketing ball.
Yeah.
And, just pay attention to those core processes, marketing,
Mhm,
sales, customer fulfillment.
mhm,
Those three things. How are we doing? Are we uh, strong in our marketing? Are we closing the opportunities? Are we making our customers happy and keeping our promise to them? And so I think 2025 is going to be a great year. Good opportunities for everybody, I believe. And if you just pay attention to those things, and again, I'd say especially marketing,
mhm.
because with change, you got to make adjustments in your marketing. Marketing is experimental to some degree. And
100%.
so, you
There's
just,
no real strategy that says this is what's going to work.
yeah.
And
So,
again, back to the family business side, every family structure mindset is very, very different. Everybody thinks differently about how they're going to grow, and roles to grow. And 2025, it's more important, even more so now as we're coming into the busy season, to get clarity on that. But just know that there is no one set solution to get more leads.
yeah.
You're going to have to dabble in a lot of things, and everybody needs to be in agreement on that.
Well, you said it. And I guess I would close out with one key word for families, and that is alignment. Family
Good.
members have to be aligned. They have to be aligned in their mindset. They have to be aligned in their priorities. They
Mm-hmm.
have to be communicating thoroughly and openly so that they're aligned in their planning and their decision making. And those three key components, marketing, sales, and customer fulfillment, they need to be aligned in what they're doing in those three areas.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great. All right. So, Glenn, how can people reach you if they need help with their family owned business?
Oh, well, they can email me, Glenn with two N's, at glennsmithcoaching.com.
Mhm.
I have a great website, great company put it together for me. Uh, so they can go to my website, glennsmithcoaching.com, and they can learn more about me there and what we do. And you're welcome to just reach out to me directly via email at Glenn with two N's uh, at glennsmithcoaching.com.
And we'll put all that in the show notes too. So awesome. Well, thank you, Glenn. I really appreciate it. And everybody, if you need some help with your growth of your business and you're having some conflict with your family owned business, Glenn is the absolute person you want to reach out to. He will, at minimum, just have a conversation with him, and he can just give you a couple tips if you're just not ready to take the leap, and just have a conversation. You'll find out how helpful he can truly be. But I highly recommend you at least put in the budget to have someone to come in and kind of, be the intermediary if you are having some conflict and you're not quite sure how to resolve it. But thanks, everybody. Thank you, Glenn, and see
Thank
everybody
you.
next time. Yep. Bye.